got founded, how it got founded, and tell us the story.
Sure. So Techstars started in 2006. We're through our awkward teenage years and kind of past that. We started a simple idea. I live in this little town called Boulder, Colorado. It's 100,000 people, but it punches way above its weight class in terms of the venture community and the startup community. And we wanted to make it better back then. Brad Feld, who you just heard mentioned, and my other co-founders, Polis, David Brown. We wanted our community to be better, stronger, and more thriving. And so we wanted to create a way to attract talent to it from all across the world.
It sounds very familiar to us here in Florida, by the way.
Yeah, to attract talent to it, to invest in that talent in maybe a little bit of a differentiated way. We were kind of doing some angel investing, and we had learned, as most angel investors do, that that's a terrific way to turn a medium-sized fortune into a much smaller one. And so we decided we wanted to do it in a way that would, actually work by galvanizing the community, bringing mentorship to the table from people who've been there and done that in the community. So we started investing with this simple model, which came to be known as the accelerator model. That word is used everywhere now. It's even used to describe some of the other guys that you mentioned. And Brad actually coined that term to describe that mentorship-driven investment activity where you're spending real time with the entrepreneurs, you're really hands-on, you're investing in a fixed way for fixed equity. And it's been a phenomenal.
For the audience, how do you see accelerator versus incubator?
The way I describe it is accelerators invest, and they spend real hands-on time. Incubators are typically more about a space that everybody hangs out in. Right? Some of them have funds around them. Short-term mentorship-driven is how we think about accelerators. 3 months, not forever. Invest and really mentor in a very hands-on way. So we've now built this model. We operate in 16 countries and about 50 cities on the ground where we have staff. We're a few hundred investors around the world. And we're part of those startup communities and part of the growth of those startup communities. And it turns out these unicorns are being born everywhere. They're not just created in Silicon Valley or wherever. If you look at where they're coming from, they're coming from all over the world. And in fact, most of the ones in Silicon Valley also come from all over the world. So our belief is that you have to be part of those communities to capture those opportunities as an investor.
Well, again, I think our audience here in Florida, we share the same belief, and we started Florida Funders really with the same mission, and the belief that not everything happens in Silicon Valley. And Y Combinator, your competitors take a very different approach, right? They move beyond the valley and then they retrench back, and they only do San Francisco and the Valley. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'm not the world-class expert on them, but that's the shtick is you've got to be in the Bay Area to build something interesting. And then clearly it's a top startup community in the world, but the trend is going in the other direction. And it's not true that all great companies get their start in the Bay Area or even their initial support, as you guys know. It's not even true that Y Combinator started there. They started in Boston, right? And so great companies are started and built everywhere. And if you can galvanize these mentorship communities, get hands-on with these companies, you activate more investors, you activate the community. And the startup community is the secret weapon of these unicorns, right? It's supporting them in the earliest stages, helping them find their customers, helping them find their investors. When the startup community is vibrant, you have much more of that activity happening all the time. So that's kind of our passion. We come from startup community building, and we are investors in that context. We're a multi-billion-dollar investment firm today, have billions of dollars of capital under management, and have invested in almost 5,000 companies in this model now around the world.
Wow. So you started in Boulder in 2006. When did you decide to move beyond Boulder, and why?
Well, any company story you hear about, hopefully they'll talk to you about pull. The idea that they're not pushing their product at the market, but the market is grabbing them by the shirt and pulling them to them. So we started to feel that a couple of years in. We did our first accelerator program. I was the original managing director. I was the only one in the firm. 2007. We had a good outcome. We said that was weird. Let's do it again. We've already made money after 1 year after the program as investors. Let's fund another one. Same thing happened. We were seeing some early exits and the community was really coming together. Then we started to be pulled. So Boston, coincidentally right around when Y Combinator was leaving their community to go to San Francisco, said, hey, we'd like to have this Techstars thing, this community-driven approach. You know, we've got plenty of gurus that know how to invest, but what about getting the whole community together? They dragged us to Boston. Similarly, we got dragged to Seattle, dragged to New York, and so we were being pulled to these markets to try to bring them all we had created to them. And you know, again, today, you know, we've stopped at about 50 markets in about 15 countries, but we got pulled to all these places. And you know, you sort of mentioned in the opening that what we really care about is not just the investing, but being a part of the story of these startup communities. So that's sort of another thing we do today. We also have a way of helping startup communities grow and thrive based on the work that my co-founder, Brad Feld, has done, writing about and researching how startup communities grow and thrive.
When we had Brad on the podcast, I wear a loop, and he saw a loop on my wrist, and he said, "Oh, I'm an investor in Loop." And I'm like, "Wow, I wish we were an investor in Loop." Love this product. So my question to you is, you know, you've been doing investing a long time. What do you look for in founders? What makes you decide that, you know, to invest in a certain founder or a certain idea?
Yeah, it's really important for people to have the context of, I think, you know, people maybe understand accelerators, but we invest in a couple of people and a dog and an idea. Like, that's the stage, right? So very early stage. There's not always a dog, but often there is. I don't know why. There's usually an idea, but not even often, sometimes an idea. Right? It's just a couple of people that you want to back. So at that stage, the way we think about it is 6 things in order that we're looking for. Team, market, progress, idea. And we put idea last just to point out how little we care about it.
So you're betting on a jockey more than the horse.
Absolutely. And so who are these people? What insight do they have? What unfair advantage do they have? What motivation do they have? What is their intrinsic motivation that comes from inside? Not the spreadsheet they created that showed how much money they could make, but like, just to take an example, PillPack, right? One of our companies is now is Amazon Pharmacy. If anybody orders their pills that way, it comes in a little pack. It's labeled with the time. Why did these guys create this company that went through our accelerator in Boston? Because some medicine almost killed someone in their family because they took the wrong doses at the wrong time, and they were pissed off about it, right? And their family had a pharmacy business that was doing these little packs of pills for nursing homes. You know, you get them in the cup at one time. And they said, we could do this for consumers, and that today is a multi-billion-dollar thing that Amazon bought called PillPack. So it's their motivation, it's their insight, it's coming from the heart. It's too hard if you don't care about the problem, right? So we're really looking at team. We look at the market that they're in. It has to be interesting. It's got to be growing or shrinking or something's got to be going on in it. Progress, like we've learned that entrepreneurs do stuff. They don't wait for funding. They just run through brick walls, right? And so we're looking at what are you actually doing here, even though you have no resources. And then idea, good idea, that's great. Someone else is going to have the same idea, so you need all the other stuff.
Yes, sir, done a dozen, right? Your story about PillPack and the passion that founder had for that reminds me of one of our Fund One portfolio companies that many of you may be familiar with, TSO Life, and the founder, David Sawyer. David approached us. He was a recent grad out of the University of Tampa, and his grandfather was dying, and he wanted to record his life, preserve it, because he knew his grandfather wasn't going to be around, and that was the genesis of his company, and that's really what he wanted to do, is help preserve people's lives at the end of their lives. So he's done very well in the senior living industry, and has taken this Brookdale, which is the largest senior housing company in the world, is his biggest customer, and he's done very well. And that was the same thing. He had the passion. It wasn't really, I want to make $1 zillion, I'm going to build this in 5 years and flip it. It was like, hey, this is what I had this problem, other people have this problem.
Motivation is hugely underrated, and I like to call it that intrinsic motivation, right? It's really built into who you are. And I'll give you another example that people don't know. heard somebody mention Uber earlier. We're investors in Uber through our first fund, $4 million valuation. So that was fun to watch that ride. But that company is regarded as like, oh, that's not a mission-driven company. It's, it's kind of had some.
Well, Travis didn't exactly give you that
No,
vibe.
but Travis wasn't the first employee, right? And so when I met Ryan, who was the initial person actually working on the business, it was Travis and Garrett's idea. Ryan was this really give first guy, had a vision of what the world could look like through transportation, right? And you could feel that he really cared about it. He's like, Dave, what are you going to do when you leave here? You're going to go walk to the hotel and get a cab? How stupid is that? You've got GPS on you. You've got a little phone. This phone's going to be a thing. GPS is going to be a thing. The intersection of all this. You should be able to push a button and go wherever you want. And we should empower millions of people to be able to earn a living. Like, there was an early vision of that mission, and that's one of the things that attracted me to it as an investor. And that got lost in the story of how the company went over time, but obviously they changed the world in this huge way.
I have to admit, the first time I